My name is Pam Mattingly. I'm the Calcasieu Parish Floodplain Administrator, and I've been doing that for most of my career here, and which really keeps us busy because a third of our area is in the floodplain, so we have a lot of development going on in there. A lot of people want to develop in those areas. Not only do we do that, but we also handle all the subdivision development, so it keeps us really busy on people developing in our area. Calcasieu Parish is a great area. When people come in, it's kind of a mid-size area. We have a lot of natural beauty here, a lot of waterways. When you come in, you'll see the beaches right over Interstate 10. And because of Interstate 10 running through Calcasieu Parish, we have a lot of people that see it. But there's also lots of pockets in the parish that are different than what you just see when you come through the interstate, because we have a lot of marsh areas, which are protection areas for a lot of the flooding in our area. But people like to live in this area because it's kind of a slower pace, and there's just a lot of areas that they can move to that are around the water. We do have a lot of waterways around this area, and people love to live near the water, and it's just a natural desire for people who want to build their homes or place their manufactured homes on their property. And so when they move into those particular areas, they kind of already assume the risk that there's going to be a potential flooding because there's water right next to them. And that's just something that they have to kind of embrace, I guess, when they do that. But when you have somebody that lives 3 miles from the water, it's harder for them to understand that their property can be flooded just as well as property nearby. But I don't think you'll ever take away the cultural desire for people wanting to live next to the water, which is where most of our floodplains are. Well, the floodplain is real down here. I mean, we do have areas that do flood down here, so we have to acknowledge the floodplain maps, whether we like them or not. And quite frankly, since the Hurricane Rita, they've been, mostly accurate. So we have to advise people when they get ready to develop their property, either building a house or putting a manufactured home. This is their potential risk, and so they need to build to that. And for the most part, people accept that. Well, basically, we administer the floodplain management program, the National Flood Insurance Program, and that entails not only determining what flood zone people are in, but also what the regulations for their particular development that they're wanting to do, depending on if it's commercial or residential. So we have to look at the regulations and work with them on their project. Right after the hurricane, we had a lot of assessment being done on the area, and we were determining if a particular home was substantially damaged or not. So at the very beginning, people knew if their property was substantially damaged, what they would have to do. We tried to advise them at the very beginning, so they would know when they got to that point when they were getting ready to repair it, what they would have to do. So I think it's not really something new for them. It's just that unless they bought a property recently and weren't familiar with the history of it, it may be a surprise to them.
And what are the main things that important things that people need to do generally when they're building a house to withstand floodwaters?
Well, I think, of course, first look and see what the flood zone is, to know what elevation they need to build to, and also look at the flood history of the area, because some areas, even though they're not declared to be in a flood hazard area, they have still flooded, so they need to know, what the flooding history of that particular area is. And now with all the new building codes, they have to meet all those wind load requirements. So it's really in their best interest to build to the new requirements to prevent them from future flooding or future damage.
And some parishes are doing even more, or they're trying to make the requirements higher than they anticipated.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, there's some areas in the parish that we have higher standards than what FEMA requires, and because we've seen the history of that particular area, knew that we had either poor drainage in the area or flooding history, so we've increased the elevation requirements, or actually made a requirement in that particular area. And again, it's to protect the citizen from having to go through the flooding event.
A standard speech that you either give to friends or people come in your office when they say, well, I just want to rebuild my house the same elevation. I don't know why people should interfere. Do you have a kind of response for that?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not an option that they can just, choose out for themselves right there, because it affects the whole parish of what people do, because they may not want to get insurance on their house or whatever that for their particular time, but they could sell that house to the next person. That person would have to get it, and so it's just a generational thing. It just doesn't affect that one person, and if they don't comply, then we could lose the whole program. People wouldn't be able to get flood insurance for the whole parish, and that would be devastating for our area, since we do have so much area in the floodplain. Our very first maps came out in 1978, and then we've had 4 revisions since then. And quite frankly, we didn't always agree with some of the revisions that we got, but when it all comes at the end of the day, they were actually accurate, because we had several properties that we didn't think that would flood during Hurricane Rita that almost flooded, but they built the proper elevation so they didn't flood. So it kind of proved to be accurate, but it took 10 years to show that was correct. Well, the technology in itself right there has just bloomed. We first got maps, they've always been paper maps, and now we actually have them on our geographical information system, so we're able to look at the computers and look up much quicker for when someone calls in and wants to know the information. It's much easier to look at because we have a very large area in Calcasieu Parish, so we have to look at, so instead of going through 30 different maps, you can just click on real quick. So that's helped us out tremendously. And just the ability to get more current and accurate information from the flood maps, since we've been through many map revisions, and now that we have the new map revision coming out, and it's based on the real event, the Hurricane Rita. It's just not a bunch of numbers. It's really more scientific, I guess you'd say. The impact of the new maps is going to be different for our area. However, we were kind of, I guess, unique is that we had went through a map revision right before Hurricane Rita hit, and we'd been through the comment period and looked at all the new maps and the new revisions, and they were literally sitting on FEMA's desk when Hurricane Rita hit. So these new maps we've gotten since then have reflected some of those changes, and we're expecting the newer maps that we'll be getting to have a lot of those changes in it that we've already seen. So there will be some changes, but I don't think they'll be substantial to what we've already seen. So people have had a chance to be able to look at those and review them already, and be able to accept them.